giver. And but this was a hang up that took me years to get over, because
Yeah.
in real love you have to give and you have to receive. So
Yes.
I've worked on that a lot, and I realized that he didn't really mean it. Like, he hadn't even met me yet, didn't know how wonderful I was.
Exactly.
Right? So
Right.
now, I mean, we've overcome that, and he's passed on now, but I adored him because he did love me once I was born. But that was it was a thing where, like, okay, when a person believes a lie, it can cause an avalanche of mistakes. And they say that when you've allowed a lie into your mind, when you start to worry. So
Oh.
isn't that
Oh.
interesting? So the
Yeah.
lie that I was letting in my mind was that somehow I was not loved. And the other lie was that somehow I had to work hard to deserve to be alive.
Yeah. Yeah.
And
Wow.
so, and you know what? It's so funny because, I mean, it's interesting because when I look back, I've done a lot of inner spiritual work and stuff to try to understand, why was my life like this?
Right. Yeah.
And yet, when I look back and realize, if this hadn't happened, then that wouldn't have happened. And if I had, right? And
Yes.
one spiritual lady that talked to me, she said, well, just look at all these wonderful things that you have been able to accomplish because of the pain of your past.
Yeah.
So it's not for naught.
Right.
It's for a reason.
Yes.
So
Yeah.
that made me say, oh. And so she said, you should be grateful that you
Mm.
went through all those things, because it was the reason why you had this impetus to try to help other people in a way that would do some good in the world.
Yeah. Wow. Wow. That is just, it was so amazing. That had to have been such a big thing to work through at
Mm-hmm.
that little mind at 8 years old, trying to process
Yes.
all of this and how it, because we just don't have the filters to understand that and how it lands in so many different areas of our life. And it has such a profound effect on everything that we do. And your spiritual teacher, I think you said spiritual teacher, who helped
Mm-hmm.
you to realize to be grateful for all of those things,
Mm-hmm.
because it was the
Mm-hmm.
impetus to what you're doing now, which is such beautiful, profound work. And do you think that's exactly why you got into working with children and why you wanted to have such a big family?
I think it might have been because I remember when I was a little kid, one of the other things that my mother, was really fantastic about is, since we didn't have like a car or anything, we'd have to walk everywhere. And when we'd go to the store, I think we had one car, and my dad used that, and she was at home with us, so we had to walk everywhere. So as we walk along, we talk. And I remember, like, if I'd see some, like, kids who were, like, fighting with each other and swearing at each other across the street or something as we were walking along, I said, gee, Mom, why do they act like that? And she said,
Uh,
well, it's probably because that's what they see at home.
oh,
And
wow.
then I'd say, wow, because, see, I never heard my parents, like, swearing at each other. I never heard people saying anything bad until my older sister became a teenager.
Everything changes now.
Right. I had never heard a bad word or anything until,
Oh,
then later on from her. But so the interesting thing was that she started me in being interested in psychology. And she
mm,
would say things like, oh, well, don't be, that person, he had a really bad, experience with blah, blah, and that's the reason why he's he's having a hard day today, and you shouldn't be, don't think it's about you. So she gave me a lot of like objectivity, because
Yeah.
I would look at people like, gee, what's wrong with them? Oh, it's not my fault. And then that way I wasn't like taking it personally, even though I had taken it personally, what
Right.
I thought about my dad. Um, but I think she gave me a lot of wisdom that way.
Yes. Yeah, that's
Yeah.
beautiful. How
Yeah.
helpful was that? My goodness. So now, did your sister go on to continue working in the psychology world?
No, my sister wasn't in working into psychology, but my sister actually became an astrologer, and
Oh, even
and
cooler.
she, yeah, right. Well, she was an interesting lady because, and she's passed on now, but she became a very famous astrologer, Antonia Lamb, and um, being around her when we were younger, it was like everything was her territory. Like if you walked into a room and she was singing, and if I started singing along, she'd say, "That's my song," and she'd get really all upset. Or if she took ballet classes, we couldn't take ballet classes. That was her territory. So
Oh, no.
yeah. So when she started studying astrology, it was like I knew I wasn't supposed to touch it. So I
Yeah.
just would secretly read her books.
There you go.
And so I studied astrology too. But then I thought, well, I can't pretend, that I'm not studying something. So I studied palmistry, and I learned how to read palms ever since I, was like a little kid. And I learned handwriting analysis and stuff, and all in an attempt to figure out what was wrong with me,
Right.
of course.
Yeah.
And
Yeah.
so, as everybody does, and I'm sure it's a wonderful thing, because otherwise, why would we even care about trying to figure things out?
Exactly. Exactly. Yes. Yes. Oh,
Right.
man. So beautiful. I just cannot even believe this. Ruthie, I always say that this is when we do these podcasts, that it is absolutely
Mhm.
a time warp because we are already out of time. And so I have this list of questions that I want to
Okay.
ask you. And so I'm wondering, would you be willing to come back and do this with me next week so we can ask all of these other
Absolutely. I would
fab-
love it. It sounds
Oh.
wonderful. Count me in.
Ah, thank you. You are just so much fun. If I was your next door neighbor, we would be hanging out all the time. Your husband would be saying, "Can she
Yes.
go home now?"
Yes, we wouldn't get anything done, but wouldn't we have fun?
That's exactly correct. Yes. Yes. Oh my goodness. Ruthie, you are such a joy to talk to.
Thank
And
you.
I
I
just
feel the
you're
same way.
thank you. You're just uplifting and just in this conversation, getting to know you a little bit more. And now I have so many more questions that I want to ask. So for the
Oh.
listeners, I want them to know because you do coach ladies, you do have a whole
Mm-hmm.
coaching service for them, and then you do
Yeah.
have programs for children, and that information will all be on the website. But I'm going to say the name of it real quick now, but it will be on the website
Okay.
on the show notes. I'm sorry, so don't worry if you don't get a chance to write it this moment. But it's
Wonderful.
yes. So there's gomommygo.com where she
Mm-hmm.
shares tools for positive reinforcement. And then we'll talk more about the EDU designs, which is
Okay.
for children's character development. And then the other
Mm-hmm.
is spirit-led supermoms.com where she works with ladies as a coach, and that
Right.
information will be in the show notes, so no worries if you didn't get that. And Ruthie's going to come back next week and we're going to dive in more and find out some more fabulous things about this beautiful soul. And I'm
Well,
honored to
thank
have
you
you
so
with
much,
me.
Nada. Well,
Mm.
thank you. And I surely think you're wonderful too. So it's
Aw.
it's all the same. We're all looking in the mirror. Takes one to know one, right?
Awesome. Yes, thank you. Yes, yes, it does.
Thank you.
Yes. Yeah. So to all of the listeners, thank you so much for being here. And the information will be in show notes. And make sure you come back and join us next week for part 2 with more with Ruthie Elliott Hillsdon, or Ruth Elliott. Same person. She is the same person. Yes.
Thank you so much.
Yes, absolutely. Thank you.
Okay.
Bye-bye for now. See you all
next week.
Thank you for spending time with us today. Please go to nadahogan.com for show notes and other information you can use right away. If you like what you heard here, please subscribe to our show, and don't forget to rate and review right there on Apple Podcasts, Stitcher, Google Play, or wherever you get your shows. And don't forget to tell your friends about it. We'll see you next week.